All right. So my name is Alan Lee, and I'm Reiki master and teacher. And today I am here with August Spree of she lives in Michigan and she does massage therapy, wellness coaching, and a bunch of other things. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello. I hate that our names rhyme.
I was thinking the same thing earlier.
It's like a Dr. Seuss book. That's fun though. Okay, so my name is August. I am 42 years old, and I became a licensed massage therapist in 2009. After that, I took quite a path, but eventually led to becoming a certified health coach, which before that, I got the fitness piece and then nutrition, and then brought it all together as a certified holistic health coach. So, mom of 3 boys, 2 of which are teenagers. I'm a cancer survivor, so I've got a lot of experience working with the cancer population and within other charities and different things like that as it pertains to either health coaching or massage therapy. And I have done quite a bit of energy work, and a lot of my additional studies when I had to keep up continuing ed credits were in energy work, Reiki and chakra healing, as well as Qigong. So that's me.
Awesome. That's a lot of stuff. And so right now I'm teaching a class that is full of massage therapy students and wanted to do a little bit of information from their perspective and things touching on a little bit more dealing directly with massage therapy than I normally teach. So we'll jump into it because we don't want to make this too long. One of the things that I wanted to go over, what are some of the experiences that you've come across where energy came into play directly with massage therapy?
Okay. I do want to say too, I forgot to say, I apologize for what's going on here, but I just left a hip hop dance class for the American Heart Association. So at least I have a good reason. Normally I would try to look a little bit less like a teenager, but okay. So my personal experience, as it pertains to energy, and I'm sure you guys have already, you can probably reach back now that you're learning different things. People in the class, I'm sure, can think about times when they interacted with people and it was, energetically, it was a mismatch or just downright disgusting or it was fantastic. And I think we've all had those experiences in our lives, even if we didn't have the words to put to them. But as a massage therapist, I remember first week as a therapist, actually, I worked on a gentleman, and he didn't do any inappropriate actions, but his entire being was repelling me the entire time I was working on him. And unfortunately, he had gotten a 90-minute session. And at the place that I was working, we did all hands-on. So it wasn't 80 minutes hands-on with the buffer in the beginning and the end. We did all 90 minutes hands-on. And I squeaked out 75 minutes before I had to leave the room. And there were a couple of things that he did, but I just remember walking up to my assistant manager at the front desk, and she looked up at me and immediately said, "What's wrong?" She said later that I looked like I was white as a ghost. And I was just like, I don't know. I have to go. I have to go. And I didn't leave for the day and abandon the rest of my shift, but I did go. Actually, I was working in a gym, so they had like private shower areas and things like that. And if I could have, I would have probably stepped into the shower in my clothes, because that's how disgusting I felt. And as I was talking to her, I started shaking, and just tears involuntarily came streaming down my face. And she was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to get you some water. I'm going to go." And she's like, "Don't worry about it. I'm going to go tell him he needs to get dressed and that his session is over and he will never be booked with you again." And she was very good about that. In later years, when I became a manager, I was very protective of my therapists in that way too. So hopefully you'll get to work in a place that is respectful of your tolerances and be able to work with you on that. So all of that to say that I'm not sure what was going on there, but we have to always be aware that we bring our personal history with us, and that all of everything that makes up who we are is interacting with everything that makes up who they are. It's not just what kind of day you had, um, just that day, or what kind of week you're having right then. It's also everything that you've experienced in your life. So if you guys went through your personal touch history, which I did when I was in massage school, all of that comes into play. And so you have to learn those tools that you need energetically to sort of guard your own history and your own energy, and then also still be open enough to work with other people's.
Right. So, quick question along those lines of what you said. You were fortunate enough to work in a place that could handle that situation for you. I do
Mm-hmm.
know a couple of our students, their plans are to have their own,
Mm-hmm.
therapy service and everything. How would you recommend going about that in that situation where they have to tell the client that their session is over and
Yeah.
and to move along?
Well, definitely. I mean, I think it should be in other classes in your schooling, they should give you sort of the words, you know what I mean? The actual terminology to use. What I had learned was to lift your hands, to say, and I've had to do this before, because as I got farther along in my career and felt strong enough to handle it myself, I've had to lift my hands and say, okay, if you make a comment like that again, your session will be over. Or your session is now over. I'm going to step out of the room. You're going to need to get dressed, and I'll see you at the front,
Yeah.
or whatever. Or I'll see you at the door, or, whatever your situation might be, your layout. I would always suggest, I know it's hard because people like to set up their own practice in their home, but I would suggest not, if at all possible, having a practice in your home unless you have a space with its own door that's separate from your home, because of energy, because people are bringing in whatever you don't know.
Right.
Unless it's a friend or something like that. I've obviously worked on people that I know in my home, but other than that, I did that early on, and it was very short-lived. And then it was more have table will travel, because I'd rather meet you at your energy space, right, than bring all of you into mine. And so that would be my recommendation, but definitely making sure that ahead of time you practice in your head those sentences, like what you will do and your sort of protocol, if you're not working in a place that has a protocol in place.
Yeah. All right. And so yeah, dealing with their energies and things like that. And Reiki, I mean, there's two different ways of doing Reiki, or you can combine the two. A lot of people do it hands off, so they're not actually touching.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot do it with their hands on. Massage therapists don't really have that option of
Right.
not touching the client.
You're right.
So, which might even be one of the reasons that some of the massage therapy students are wanting to lean towards Reiki. But
well, that's true.
Yeah,
I know a lot of seasoned massage therapists who move into Reiki as they get older, because the typical massage therapist career is about 7 years before your body is done. Yeah. Your thumbs are blown, you know what I mean? Your wrists, your forearms, like everything is just sort of achy. And I mean, I got to the point where it was hard for me to just open a jar, and not like a jar that was really tightly screwed. It was just, right, it was hard for me to do normal things. So that's definitely an option as well within Reiki, which is nice. Mm-hmm. But if you're incorporating it into massage, or if you're using a hands-on technique, as I put there, massage therapy is unique in how I was taught, in that it's a profession. Oh, I messed up there. Oh well. It's a profession where you have constant contact with a person's exposed skin for extended periods of time. So even surgeons, they are, obviously hands in bodies for long periods of time, but they're not interacting with the person. You know what I mean? So it creates this semblance of intimacy, because whether or not you're talking with them, the person is aware, and your hands are touching their bare skin for an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours sometimes, depending on what type of sessions that you do. So you have to have clear boundaries, but energy doesn't know the difference.
Right.
And so some of the things that I learned early on were mental imagery. One of my instructors, actually, funny story, first day of class, she's like, everybody talk about where you're from and, how you got here and whatever. And we're going around the room. And when it came to me, I opened my mouth and she pointed at me and said, oh, you. And I was like, I didn't even say anything. Like, how am I in trouble? And and she said, you are just one giant sponge. She's like, you and I are going to have a lot of conversations because you haven't even said a word and I can already tell we have to like learn some energy work, And I was like, oh. So she was very, very helpful in helping me. She said to picture a bubble or a block or whatever type of image I would need sort of at my elbows
Hmm.
and coming up and over my body to protect me from the person's energy and also to hold my energy, from that person.
Right.
And later on, it was something that I utilized in the beginning, but a few months, a year maybe in, it's not something that you have to mentally picture because you're used to doing it. But it's basically, creating that shield. And it doesn't matter if the person's wonderful. I've learned that too. It could be wonderful person, but that doesn't mean you need to absorb it all. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you have to sort of create that for each client and clear it out after each client as well. And that could be
Yeah.
different methods. You guys can learn your own methods of doing that because I think that's a very personal type of thing. But remember that practice makes perfect because sometimes you only have seconds to accomplish this between clients, depending on how your practice is set up. So the more you do it, the easier it'll be, and then you won't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's the nice part. So don't get frustrated in the beginning, I would say. And then at the end of a shift or a day, some days I'd have 7, 8 hours straight, just back to back to back to back clients, and you're shoving a protein bar, in between clients, which isn't the best practice. But at the end of it, you just fall into a chair and you want to you know,
Yeah.
just move into your relaxing time. But it's very important to have even if it's a small buffer where you're sort of clearing out all your energy, resetting and becoming yourself again, and not all the things you might have picked up.
Right. Um, energy bars. So that nicely segues to the other point. When dealing with our health and things like that, obviously, everybody kind of knows that what you eat affects your body, and massage therapists learn that as well when it comes to health and nutrition and things like that. Um, how does that affect our energies, though? When we think, a lot of people, when they think about energy, they don't think about it being within the physical form and being affected by it because we speak so much about how energy moves beyond that.
Hmm.
So, in your experience, what do you feel about the nutritional part of our bodies versus our energies?
Um, so I could talk about this for much, much too long, but my final in school or my thesis was on chakras and the endocrine system. Um,
Okay.
Basically, how each energy center, each chakra point, or the main ones, I know there are many, but correlates with one of our endocrine glands in our body, and which physiologically, if you understand anatomy, your hormones, your hormonal glands, your endocrine system runs your body because your
Hmm.
endocrine system runs your brain and all of the other organs. And your brain is
Right.
what tells all the organs to do what they need to do. So it's a symbiotic relationship, but the hormones, if they're out of balance, everything is out of balance.
Hmm.
So moving that towards food and how that affects your energy, these energy centers are built on a specific balance. And when we take in food that is out of balance or is compromising that balance, it directly relates to our energy, and not just energy levels as we know, for exercising and things like that, but also how we take in the world around us and how we react to it. Our ability to withstand stress or not withstand it, or and our ability to interact with people who may not be compatible,
Right.
or so the most important thing is that it just makes sense. I know people think that it's such fluff sometimes, but if your food affects your immune system, affects your brain function, affects your breathing. I mean, how can you possibly imagine that it doesn't affect your energy? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
the important thing with it is I'm not one of those people who just says everyone should eat this way. You know, I think each person's body is very different. Now, there are obvious things like smoking and, excess alcohol and things like that that are just not good for every, human body. But
Mhm.
um, as far as vegetarian, pescatarian, paleo, you could get into that forever and ever and ever. The most important thing that I have learned is learn your body and listen to it. And those tiny little subtle things, when you eat something, like for instance, oatmeal. I know that oatmeal is heart healthy. I know that as a food, it's a good food. But for me, if I eat oatmeal, I feel very sluggish.
Yeah.
It is not a positive energy food for me. Same with, I love fish, but salmon, it slows me down a little bit. I tend to do better and function better with more of the white fish
Mhm.
and things like that. And it's not a flavor thing. I love salmon,
Yeah.
but it's like when you start to really tune in and listen to your body, it will tell you what foods, and not like your taste buds, like cake is really awesome for my body.
Well, that's funny you said that, because one of the students the other day had said, she tends to eat healthy, but sometimes she listens to her body when it tells her that she should get this sweets or
Mhm.
this, and I was trying to explain to her, it's not necessarily that our body is telling us what it needs. Our body's trying to tell us what it desires, and our minds are trying to convince ourselves we've eaten healthy for this amount of time, and so now it's okay to do this, or we just left the gym so we can have that piece of cake. And
Well, I would just shift the terminology as like your body is telling you that it needs something sweet, but you'll find that you'll probably be satisfied with an orange or a pear, or you know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
Like it might be telling you need something sweet right then, because we do need a certain
Right.
amount of sugar,
Mhm.
but it may not be that candy that you're craving. Because
Yeah.
there's a certain part too that when I say listen to your body, but we also need to train our bodies. If you're just like, I had someone when I was doing health coaching, and we had this lettuce wrap recipe. She's like, "Can I substitute the lettuce for rice and the vinaigrette for hot sauce?" And I was like, "No." No, I know that you think, that's what your body needs because it tastes good, but you also do need to learn to eat the healthy stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's sort of some caveats to that blanket statement of listening to your body,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, overall, eat the healthy things, and if your body says that it needs sugar, try those things that are better
Right.
first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there was I was about to say, but it just slipped away from me. But yeah, I mean, natural sugars, obviously. And I had mentioned in the class that for a long time I didn't know, when I used to drink all the time, that dill from pickles and things like that helps combat hangovers.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I would always come home drunk and want to eat a whole jar of pickles.
Oh,
And I
God.
had no clue why I had the biggest craving for pickles after I would drink.
Yeah.
And then I found out why. I was like, that's an example of your body telling you that it needs something.
Yes.
Even, I don't eat bananas very often.
Mhm.
But when I crave them, I usually come across that I'm getting muscle cramps within the
Mhm.
same close amount of time,
Yeah.
things like that. So it's kind of interesting how things that we never even knew that our bodies
Right.
needed, it'll start craving those foods, and we're like, why do I want this right now? And then you
Yeah.
find out, oh,
Especially the more you introduce, this is what I found, and I've had clients go, "Oh my gosh, you're right," because I'll give them recipes and they're just like, "Oh, I don't really eat tomatoes," or they'll do that kind of stuff, and then months later they'll say, "You know what? I woke up and I was craving spinach," and that's happened to me. I'll crave spinach and then find out that I'm low in iron, you know.
yeah,
So
yep,
yeah, your body does tell you what it needs, but you also need to clear out any of those bad habits that you might have if you're doing ice cream every night, which I know a lot of people do, and
yeah,
that kind of stuff. You got to clear that out and give it a chance to get used to the healthy stuff.
yeah. Um, Moving on to our next topic.
Hmm.
So a lot of in most jobs in the workforce, you have uh, times where your boss will tell you leave it at the door. and they'll
Yeah.
just tell you, if you're having a bad day, don't bring your work here, things like that. And as a massage therapist, and also, doing Reiki and chakra balancing, things like that, we're dealing with people's bad days.
True.
Most people don't walk in when they're having a good day or a good whatever their situation is.
Yeah.
Um, I was even speaking to one of our students. She does tarot readings and things like that, and she was like, I deal with a lot of sadness and things like that. I said, well, most people don't care to get advice when they think everything's going well.
It's
I
true.
said, unless they're just into that, like that world of things, they don't care to ask anybody questions.
Right.
And it's when, even whether it's something that subconsciously is going wrong or they're consciously thinking about it, they're seeking an answer, usually because they don't like something or because they really want something that they don't have.
Yeah.
So it takes that, and same thing with massage therapy. They don't show up until 6 weeks after they should have been there. And they say,
Sometimes
"Oh,
years.
I've been having this pain." Yeah. How long have you been having this pain? Oh, years. Like, why didn't you come? Well,
Yeah.
So, so with that, obviously, they don't leave their issues at home. They bring them to you. So how
Hmm.
important is it, and how difficult is it, and how do you combat getting rid of your own blockages in order to help other people in those situations?
Yeah. Well, I will say this, being a massage therapist has been one of the most healing, personal healing things, um, because of the things I had to learn in order to help other people. And so that is a benefit of it, but it's definitely a learning curve. So I don't think there's necessarily one way for you to fix your own blockages. But what I can say is that, regarding leave it at the door, again, when I was managing, I had my office and I had this jar of happy pills, which were M&Ms. Somebody put Skittles in them once and I got so mad. But but I would tell my staff that when I would hire them, I would say, listen, you might have a bad day, you might have issues that are going on personally, or you might have just interacted with a difficult client. Come into this office. This is your safety bubble. Pour it all out here so you can go back and be your best self, you know?
Hmm.
Um, so it's nice if you have that space. If that's not created for you at your place of work or whatever, one of the things I tell my clients is to create a cozy corner. And you can do that with 2 pillows, you know?
Right.
But I felt that it was important to create a space where I could go and be like, here's where all the shit go, or sorry, here's where all the
No, you're
stuff
good.
goes. Um, so there was a place for me to dump it because I think that's important. Shoving things down and pretending it doesn't exist just doesn't work.
Right.
But if you know that you have a place to do that, it's easier for you to focus when you're working and not
Hmm.
carry your stuff. So that's part number one, carrying your stuff in and having your own place to do that. Part number two is other people's. And I would say that's just empathy. Sometimes you don't feel like hearing someone's crap. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, stop talking. Let me just do my
Yeah.
work. Okay. But I have had everything from I go to touch someone and my hands rest on them for the initial touch and they burst into tears. And they sit up and I have to listen. You know, this is
Yeah.
completely outside my scope of practice, but that's what they needed. They needed a quiet room. This one mom had lost her 14-month-old son to leukemia. I'll never forget her. And she spent most of her session crying, sitting on the table crying and talking to me about it. And I only got to work on her for probably about 20 minutes, you know, but that's what
Yeah.
she needed. And then I've had, other the stuff comes out. You start working on them and stuff just comes out. So
Yeah.
sometimes I have to just say to myself, I literally repeat these words: love and acceptance, love and acceptance, love and acceptance. Like I'm working and in my mind, I'm just repeating love and acceptance because I'm not trying to absorb or give advice. That's number
Hmm.
one, because you're going to want to. You're going to want to be like, maybe you shouldn't date someone who hits you. Maybe that, you know,
Yeah.
but you're going to want to give people advice, but that's not your scope of practice. And I caution you, I I can't say that strongly enough. Caution you against getting into that habit because people will blame you.
Yeah.
And it will come around no matter how good your intentions are, you know, it's just,
Yeah.
it's outside the scope of your practice, period. So you're the listening board, you're the person.
Yeah.
And
And it's funny because and not to cut you off, but it's not that the massage is causing them to go through their emotions. I personally believe that that's part of the energy work.
yeah.
The one of the biggest things that I teach and many other Reiki masters teach is whenever you do a Reiki session, have a bunch of issues there.
Have what?
Let be release, and it's just one of
Oh,
those
yeah.
things. When you're dealing with people's energy in that way. So it's funny that even just in doing massages that it happens, and a lot of people say that happens, and
Hmm.
they don't realize that it's not just because someone's close and they're hanging out and
Right.
they're feeling relaxed and they feel like talking now because they're relaxed.
No,
That's not what
no,
it is.
no. And I've had say, oh my goodness, I don't know why I just told you that. I haven't talked about that to anyone, and they're just like,
Yeah.
you just have this calming presence about you. And, and they say all kinds of things. Or I've had people, please marry me. Don't tell my wife that I just asked you to marry me, and I'm like, it's all, it happens, So yeah, I mean, people just, their guards are let down, and there can be all different kinds of things that happen as a result of that. But so yeah, I just wanted to say with that, if you just remain consistent, you have your own space to kind of dump whatever it is that you need to dump. And when you step into that room, it's about that person. It's love and acceptance for that person wherever they're at in their journey. And I did put a point on there about female moon cycles affecting energy levels and healing abilities, because the majority of the massage therapy industry is female, although I have had several strong discussions with people who try to discriminate against males in the
Right.
industry. But this is worth mentioning because there's such a strong female presence. And if you or your client, which you're not going to necessarily know unless they happen to be very open, is on their cycle, a lot of times it's referred to as behind the veil,
Hmm.
because you are a little bit more open energetically. Um, it's again going back to the hormones. It's
Right.
part of that, and you're more open to and receptive to receiving and also giving energy, and so you have to be cognizant of that and be even more protective of yourself because
Hmm.
of that. Because the tiniest thing, and I know, it's sort of the joke, like, women are so sensitive. It's not about being sensitive, it's about being more in tune. We're actually,
Yeah.
during that time, more in tune with energy around us, and that makes you more susceptible to it.
Hmm.
So a client who could have walked through the door and may not have affected you at all last week, this week will hit you in the face like a brick.
Yeah.
So you have to understand that during that week, um, take very good care of yourself. I used to come home from work every day and put myself in an Epsom salt bath during that week,
Right.
because it was my way of clearing out everything and resetting,
Yeah.
lavender, Epsom salts. So whatever it is that you need to do, like, take extra good care of yourself during that time, and be aware that you'll need a little bit extra shielding.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
so that's what you do after a session.
mhm.
What do you do? And then you talked briefly about um, like the box of leaving your things in your problems.
Yeah.
Um, but what else do you do to prepare yourself, whether it's mentally or physically or?
Um, a big thing that I always did was I would make sure that I showed up at least a half an hour early. I know that that's hard. As a person who's managed several places, I can say that massage therapists don't like to be early. As a whole in the industry, it's pretty funny, but which I find it hilarious because it's a timed industry.
Mhm.
But if you can, because I also respect that people are sometimes going from job to job, if you can arrive a half an hour early, and I would go into my room. So this also is very helpful when you're sharing space.
Mhm.
It's not only your space. I hated the places that I worked where I had to share my space. Like, they moved my stuff. everything, you know.
Yeah.
So it's especially helpful for that. But you show up a half an hour early. I go into my room. I put the lights where I want them. I put on the music that I want. I spray the aromatherapy that I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would turn the table warmer on and sit on the table. And you can do a 10-minute meditation. There's apps, which I talk about, I have in the final slide, that have them already in there. They literally talk you through it, you know, and it's like 8 to 10 minutes of just breathing. And you can pick if you want gratitude or, you know, whatever you're feeling that day. You can pick different themes, and you can do that if you want, or you can just listen to the plinky plunky music and breathe yourself, or, you
Right.
know, you can go through your own internal meditation, whatever that is. But that was a big deal for me because I would sort of infuse the space with my energy first,
Mm-hmm.
so that it felt like people were entering into my space, as opposed to me feeling out of sorts, or, you know, rushing in and then being like, okay, come on back. And it's this, you know, space that's sort of open to absorbing whatever.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I think that is all the points that I had to touch on today.
Okay.
Maybe I'm gonna try and see if we can get the students all on a chat together and do a little question and answers later next week. But
Okay.
other than that, thank you. And if anybody, you can tell people how to get in touch with you too, but they can also check out the links in the description as well.
Okay.
So yeah, how do people find you?
Oh, well, I'm on Facebook, August Spree, nutrition events. I'm sorry,